Hi, my name is Paul Brighton, aka Sifu Boggie, and welcome to The Way of Conscious Mindfulness, a show about mind, body, and spirit, about science and spirituality, and basically, each week we have a different guest, and our premise is Daoism, the way, the path. So each week it is a show about that person, their way. So this show is The Way of Anna Jirsch. So, hello, Anne. Nice to meet you. And hello. Right. Welcome to your show, not the show, but your show. And quite simply, what are you about? What is Anna Jirsch? So, what are you about? What do you do?
And
so what do you do? What are you about? What do you do?
Hello.
Hello. So what do you do? What are your skills? What are your techniques?
I don't know if she can hear us. Anne, can you hear us?
I'm getting three different recordings seem to be coming through at once.
Okay. Right.
I can hear about three different conversations there, all overlapping each other.
Right. Do you have your YouTube channel still on?
Do you want me to turn off YouTube? Do you want me to turn it off?
Yes. As long as it doesn't turn off Google Hangouts.
Is that better?
Well,
that's right. I was just hearing loads of different things going on there. It was about three different conversations were being played to me.
No worries. How many is there now?
One.
Cool. Right. Okay. Right. We're back on. So this show. We'll edit this bit. So this show, quite simply, is The Way of Anna Jirsch. So quite simply, Anne, what are you? What do you do? What are your skills?
For 40 years I've been reading tarot cards. That was how I kind of started out, and I love cards. They kind of talk to me. And about 30 years ago, I was fascinated by past life regression, totally. And you go back 30 years, you couldn't just Google people, find people, but I just really had this kind of obsession about finding out who I was in a past life. It took me years before I found anyone that could regress me, but as soon as I found somebody, I thought, I have to do this. There was no training anywhere. So I kind of went and studied hypnotherapy, then wrote my own scripts. And I worked happily with that for 20 odd years. Then one day I discovered future life regression. And what happened was I was working with some military people trying to find out something in the past. And we automatically jumped into the future, all three of us. We didn't know that we had at the time. We just thought we'd had a session that had gone wrong. What we actually saw was September the 11th, Twin Towers, 3 weeks before it happened. Now, we didn't know what we'd seen. We had no idea what we'd seen. We just kind of had this thing where we saw this disaster. And we just presumed our session had gone wrong because we didn't go back in time. So we thought, well, we've messed up today. We're obviously not on form. So we went up the pub, because that's what you do when you work with soldiers. You give up and you go up the pub. So we went up the pub. 3 weeks later, when it all happened, we were shell-shocked, really. The thing is, we were shocked because we didn't know enough to tell anyone or stop it, but we realized we had clearly tapped into a major event in the future, and that started off a whole catalogue of events that's just changed my life. I mean, I started to experiment with the soldiers, actually willingly trying to will ourselves to see future events. And so we did. For 3 years, we just kept looking at world events. So we just kept presuming it was a fluke. Even though things we were seeing were really obscure, we just kept seeing things over and over again. One of the things was I took the soldiers forward and said, will they catch bin Laden? That was the big question at the time. Will they catch bin Laden, the bad guy? And the answer came back, well, they're not really looking. They're that they're not really looking for him. Thinking, well, that sounds a bit weird. And then one of the soldiers said, no, they're getting ready to invade Iraq. And I said, who? And he said, well, America and England. And we laughed. It just sounded ridiculous. Of course, sometime later they did. So after that, we just kept building up all these. Then we started to experiment with people, take them forward in time. Where you're working in 5 years' time, you know, where you're living. They'd see a company or they'd see where they're living. And they'd end up there. But the weird thing is, it wasn't 5 years. They'd come back to us 6 months, a year down the road and go, oh, I've met that person. Oh, I'm working in that place. It was almost as if we were bringing the future forward. People try manifesting, but I think what we do, we get to the future and we kind of bring it back into our current consciousness. That's how it seems to work. So all of a sudden, these things are starting to happen really quickly. So the obvious thing then to work with is, well, let's find a better future. You know, supposing at 5 years' time you're still in the dead-end job, supposing there's a better option. So we experimented, found a better future, brought that back to our current consciousness. Wow, kapow, amazing things started to happen. So, excuse me, I talk fast, so tell me if I talk too fast. It's been such an exciting journey. We started to look at world events, and I've got free downloads on my website where you can look at the world in 100 years' time. I gave this out as a recording to loads of people, did big groups. They all kept saying the same stuff over and over, which was pretty mind-blowing. Then I did another recording, which is a free download, and it's go to the world in 50 years' time. How is it? What are we doing? How is the world? Then I take you to another future, the best future for the world. How is it? How do we make that happen? What do we need to know right now? So, and you know, I've done big groups. I did a big group in Japan. This was so cool. Big room full of people. They had pen and paper in front of them, not allowed to collaborate. Took them through the exercise. At the end of it, I said, write down what you see. I asked about, obviously, the obvious things to ask about is energy. You know, how are we going to travel around in 50 years' time? You know, we have to know this economy, the weather, you know, the eco stuff. So, and they said free energy. And 3/4 of the room had actually drawn a picture of a square building and written free energy company across it. And they talked about some sort of a grid out in space, which would harness energy, which sounded so sci-fi. Of course, about a few months back, there was something in the press sort of saying they're now experimenting. They believe they can build some sort of grid out in space to send energy back. So, I mean, I'm not techie. I don't understand all this stuff. But constantly we see things that start to happen. So that's where we are. So what happened was I wrote a book, and the book just went ballistic, to be honest. It's in loads of languages. So you can imagine people started to contact me saying, I want a session of this stuff. You know, when you come into Australia or Spain or here or there. And I thought, well, I can't do this all on my own, so I ought to train a few people. So in my mind, I thought 6 people, that will help out. Well, now we're in 17 countries.
Wow.
I know, it's cool, isn't it? And it sounds bigger than what it is. I mean, in some places, I might have 1 or 2 people, but yeah, it's really, really grown. Yeah, it's really, really grown cool. Now I've got people teaching my methods. And I just sat there and wrote down exactly what to do and never had to change it. It's very straight. It's actually really straightforward. So it's been an amazing journey that has completely changed my life. I've now got over 600 practitioners out there working, you know, doing amazing sessions. But what I love is you can waste so much time in life. How many people reach their full potential? What I love is finding people's best future where they've gone beyond what's holding them back now. You know, what's holding people back? You know, maybe they'll find the love of their life or the success. You imagine if, you know, to me, it's a lot of the time, it's like if somebody reaches their full potential, look at the difference they can make to other people. You know, it spreads out there. You know, you being happy and having a great life, it spreads that energy. And it also, I've had a lot in my life where people have said, if you can do it, I can do it. Because I come from a very poor background, very uneducated. I couldn't read and write properly when I left school. So people do look at me and go, if you can do it, I can do it, which is really cool. So I love getting people out there and think it will inspire the people around them. This can have a lovely sort of wave effect. Does that make sense?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, when you live your dream, everyone sees you living your dream and is called to their higher potential to try and live their dream, just subconsciously, even just having that effect, because your vibration will affect their vibration.
Absolutely. I've just seen something very strange behind you up in the corner. It looks like a weird creature with a horn on its head.
It's a cat.
Oh, okay.
I rescued old toys. This was a cat. There was an electronical dancing cat, and the robot died, so I gave it butterfly wings and new eyes and horn.
Oh, I love it.
Part of my rescue program for stuffed animals, where they get rescued and remade. And I have a bunny goyle too.
Love it. Love it. Love it.
See, this is why I call him Q, as in like James Bond, the inventor. He's my mad professor. He's making all my Tai Chi robes and all. Oh, where is it? Where's the Warhammers? Oh,
I make Warhammers and yeah.
Loads of stuff. So I'll find a Warhammer. You've got the helm, Q.
Okay.
Well, the funny thing is, it's like when you talk about inventing, one of the things that we've done is seen future inventions. And it was right in our early days, I saw the iPad. This was long before we knew anything about these touch screens and blah, blah, blah. We didn't know about all that. I saw it, and only the iPad I saw is miles better than what we've got today. I'll tell you about it because it's so super cool. So I saw these children and they were holding like this stick thing. They were all holding a stick. They didn't have score bags or anything. They're just carrying a stick. And I thought, this is a bit strange. So, and then I wondered what it was. And they scrolled it out. And then it was every bit of work they needed, videos, you know, everything, all their work was on it. They could tap on it. They could just scroll it out. They could type on it. They could read stuff. They had every bit of information. It just, every bit of work, everything they needed was there. And I thought, well, my first thought was that could be a bit dangerous. That could be worth money. And, you know, kids carrying it around, they'll get mugged. And as soon as I thought that, I knew that it could only be owned by their DNA. But this is much more futuristic than what we got today. But I have actually heard that they're working on some sort of scroll out magazine, and they're working on something where you can only open your phone or whatever by your own DNA. So this will happen at some point. We saw the flying car. We actually saw the flying car and tracked it down, funny enough, to a German company. And so I called them up. I went, look, I do this thing called future life progression, and yeah, we saw this flying car, and saw that you were making it. They went, oh, yeah. They were not in the least bit phased. I mean, normally people think, who's this crazy woman? But they didn't. They were really cool. And they actually said we could have bought shares. I really have missed some opportunities. I'll have to be a bit more aware. Because one, I could have had shares in it. Now, NASA's actually really interested in this car. And they're talking about building a highway in the sky. So that's really cool. The iPad, somebody said, why didn't you patent that? And I thought, oh, yeah, Apple would have had to have come to me. How cool would that have been?
That would have been great.
But we can look at other things. I mean, I think this is something we can do. We can look at a lot of things in the future and anticipate them. But the main thing for me is to create better futures. You know, because we often struggle, take a long time to learn a lesson, you know, don't know where we're heading. You know, how about we sort some of this stuff out, so you know exactly where you're heading in life, what you're doing, you know, what you're aiming for, having the ability, you know, you go forward to where you've got the ability, suddenly you click into it a lot sooner.
Well, it makes sense because you're going to learn that you're going to be able to harness that vibration, because that vibration will be modeled for you before, and that way you can more easily attuned to that vibration instead of having to find the vibration on your own.
Exactly. That's exactly it. So I wrote that book, and then for my third book, the publisher wanted me to write something standalone that was nothing to do. And of course, I just want to zoom around in future. I mean, I'm quite happy time traveling all day. So I totally love zooming around in time. And they wouldn't have it. They said, we want something, a different subject, and we want it standalone. So you're going to like this. What I did, I spent a year going off 100 or 200 years into the future to find out what we know then that we need to know now. I was coming up with all this amazing stuff. It was how colours, vibrations, sounds, smells, by getting really fine-tuning the effect you want to get. can create, and see it being used on prisoners to calm them. You know, we know colour affects us. We know sound, but they seem to have like a pyramid where you could kind of put it all together. You know, you could actually create all of it together and really fine tune, you know, because you might say orange, but there's millions of shades of any one colour, and really fine tune it and create these amazing effects. So the third book, when it came out, people were just going, wow, they've never read anything like this before, because a lot of books are rehashes of each other. And they went, where'd you get the information from? The future. I'll go into the future and get it. So that's how I wrote the third book. So a lot of the third book, it's called Cosmic Energy. I don't like the title too much, to be honest, but cosmic was the word that everybody loved at the time, so my publisher wanted to use that. But I wanted to call it Energy is Everything, because energy is everything. It's all about energy. You can change somebody's energy in a heartbeat. You know, somebody can walk along, feel great, and you just go, do you know what? You look awful today. You're a horrible person. Their energy will plummet. We're human. You know, we shouldn't let somebody affect us. But somebody says something horrible to you, your energy drops. Somebody tells you the most gorgeous creature on earth, your energy comes up. You play a piece of music that means something to you. It can make you cry. Can make you laugh, can make you can be exhausted and want to dance around the room, you know, just by the effect of music. So energy is a fabulous subject, and we know far more in the future, which I find very exciting.
Oh, thank God.
So that was book number 3. So the journey carried on. I started training people, still carried on reading tarot because I love tarot. And the thing is, in my future, I saw many things for me that subsequently happened. I tap in to see what countries I'm going to work in. That's quite, because I like traveling. Traveling is really good fun.
You're going to make it over here?
Yeah, I haven't been a lot. Oh, I can't wait. I'm waiting to come out there. I'm waiting. I came out and shot a pilot for a TV show last year. Which went well. So we're just waiting for that to happen. Then I'll be flying back out to make my TV series. So yeah, that's. But I've got friends.
Wow.
I've got friends in. I've got quite a few friends. A load of them suddenly went off to LA. A load of them suddenly went off to Los Angeles. You know, you got the Brit invasion. A load of my buddies just moved out there all at the same time. So I went out to LA, as I say, last year and shot that, which was great fun. I've not seen a lot of America, but one place I went to that was, you know, you got your bucket list. I went to New Orleans. Oh my God, I thought I died and gone to heaven. That was, fabulous, beyond fabulous. I grew up reading Mark Twain, so being there and going on a boat up the Mississippi and having a reading with a voodoo priestess. Oh my God, I loved it. That was just
nice.
It was so good. New Orleans I have to go back there. It's so good. So yeah, and I ended up in Atlanta. I don't quite know how. Well, you end up places. I actually flew out to Austin, Texas to see an old friend of mine who's quite an unusual girl, quite a fabulous girl. But she's quite unusual. I mean, she gets thrown out of countries. Yeah, I don't know how she does it. Yeah, she does. She's quite an outrageous girl. She's been thrown out about 4 or 5, I think. I don't know what she does, because she's a perfectly nice girl. Yeah, she's out. I could get thrown out of a bar, but she gets thrown out of countries. I mean, it's a different level, isn't it?
I got thrown off a mountain. That was totally different.
I'm kidding. So I went to stay with her in Austin, and she said, take my van, and where do you want to go? And I said, New Orleans. And she said, well, head off that way, go on that road and go, and it's not far. It took me about 3 days. You've got to remember, in England, you drive for 4 or 5 hours and you're in the sea. We can't drive for days here. We just can't. So it took some adjusting, but it was just awesome. So yes, I've seen little bits of America. I'll tell you a weird one. All my life I've wanted to go to New York. And whenever I've gone to go, something's happened and I've not got there. It's really weird. I'll travel easy. I'll go anywhere. Every time I've gone to go to New York, all these years, I've not got there. Something's happened and I've not got there. It's weird. Both my daughters have been there, not me. Weird. So I need to get there. But no, I probably would like where you are. I mean, it's like the Missy. They used to have a quiz which online, and it was something like yourspot.com, and they ask you loads and loads of questions, then tell you your ideal place in America. Mine come up around the Mississippi every time, so I think that would be my place. I think that would be more where that would suit me. So I will come back, I promise. I can't wait.
Okay. Excellent, because I'm excited.
So with the future stuff, this is it. I wrote the third book, and then I didn't write for another book for 4 years. The reason being was I was trying to get further into the future. I was trying to go more than 1,000 years. And it's weird because when you go more than 1,000 years, people just seem to be just energy. So what do you do with that? You know, what do you ask when we're just energy? You know, you ask what your role is, and I'm not that deep. You know, I'm not. You know, you get people that are spiritual that are terribly deep. I don't think I am. I actually come to the conclusion a little while ago that I'm actually quite shallow for a spiritual person. I'm very spiritual, but I am quite shallow as well. I don't think I'm very evolved, and I really mean that. I've thought about it a lot. I was with a whole bunch of spiritual people a while back, and I have discussions. And I sit there, and I was just thinking, I just can't do this. You know, they ask a lot of really deep questions. I think I'm quite shallow with it also, and I think that's why I was finding it hard to go 1,000 years, because I wanted to communicate with myself in 1,000 years' time. And eventually I did. It took 4 years. Then one day, my future self from 1,000 years was there. It was weird, and it was fabulous. It was amazing. And I've since taken quite a few people to meet their far distant future self, because our future selves are so evolved when you go that far. Oh, it's so good, so good when you get to get that. And it turned out what I was asking was really too stupid for them to answer. They're so evolved. You know, I'm asking them stuff that just go away, you know, telling me to go away. So I had to wait for them to sort of come back to me and sort of direct me a bit, you know, like you having to direct me how to work this internet thingy. They had to guide me a bit. So once that communication was there, that was amazing. That was good. Previous to that, I've often taken people into their next lifetime. You know, it stands to reason if we've had past lives, stands to reason we have future lifetimes. So I've taken people, and the amazing thing is everybody I've taken into their next lifetime is way more evolved than they are now. Way more evolved. So just being able to go into that next lifetime and speak to yourself and say, what do I need to do? You know, what do I need to grow? What do I need to stop doing is often one of the best questions. And actually tap into that energy and feel it. When people come back, they're different. They even walk a bit different. Strange, they think different, you know. So for me, going way off into the future, it has changed me. I do think different. I don't care about silly stuff as much. I've become a bit more black and white about life, really. You know, I've become a bit more black and white. Like, that's bad energy, get rid of it. It's just like, that's good energy. Whereas before I'd have been a bit more grey area, and maybe that person's just trying to, you know. Now I'm kind of like, no, I don't want their energy around me. You know, I've got a bit more, in a way, rigid. And I did a group of people, and a girl said she felt by going way into the future, she felt as if she'd become more clinical. And I said, I know what you mean, but to me it's almost like a cleaner energy. And I said, if you'd go back to yourself as a cave woman and you saw yourself now, you'd think you were clinical now compared to back then, because you'd have just killed somebody for their food. You know, it's just totally. I think by going 1,000 years into the future, you are, you know, you've really got this bit more of a clean-cut energy. You're less primitive in a way, because we're still pretty primitive, really, aren't we? I think we are.
I think our viewpoints. I think what we consider important. That's the biggest thing. It's funny the way sort of the things you're sort of saying and the way you're talking. Like firstly, you think you're not very evolved. The whole Daoist viewpoint. In fact, there was a bloke called Benjamin Hoff that wrote a book called Tao of Pooh, as in Winnie the Pooh.
Do you know, I've got that somewhere and I've never read it. I've actually got that.
You should totally
read it.
I will. It's about 12.
It's what you're talking about. It's pretty much you. Is that basically one of the things in Daoism they say is that if you can be childlike, or simple pleasures open up great adventures. So not not being so I'm so super involved. Is that just enjoying being the way they are, and just loving life and just having fun is actually an evolved being.
I love that.
In the Daoist viewpoint, Winnie the Pooh has all these great pleasures because he doesn't take life too seriously, and he doesn't complicate things with complicated thoughts and issues and everything else. Where you have rabbits running around at 5 billion miles an hour trying to get to everything. That's modern society. Modern society.
Yes, it is. That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
That makes
this
sense
whole
to me.
Rush. And you've got Al, who knows everything, but he knows so much that he misses the point. And again, that's that when I've seen it with spiritual people, I've seen it with intellectual people, where they know all this information, but then they miss the point. I know all this stuff, and it's like, yeah, cool, but you're missing the point. And this is one of the things there's this interesting in Daoism where it says, there are 10,000 things. What originally they would say is there were basic steps of the principles of the universe, and eventually get to 10,000 things. And 10,000 things is, in essence, there was the ancient way of saying everything, the universe. It is that you can, you find basic principles, but you can get deeper and deeper and deeper. And it's like, originally we found the atom, and then we looked deeper and we found quarks, we looked deeper and we found more stuff. And when in quantum physics, there's just this immense amount of stuff. And in Daoism, they basically say, the more you look, the more you'll find. The more you look, the more... So you just keep finding more stuff. And it's interesting how you say you went up to, like I say, 1,000 years into the future, and it's all energy. Now, the Daoists, especially, I've always, for me, or at least my version of Daoism is, because Daoism just means the way, the balance, the path. But within the links of the Eastern Daoism, the barefoot doctors and the dragon dog shaman, which is a different style of Daoists, Daoism itself is spiritual science. There's a logic to it, that everything is energy, and different energies work in different ways. Look, it'll be like chemicals or cocktails. Coke on its own tastes like Coke, but add rum to Coke, and rum and Coke is different to both. It's a new flavour. Add coconut to rum and Coke, and you create something totally different. And that's the point. And in energy stuff and Tai Chi, and they go, well, this exercise does this, but when you add this one, something totally different happens. And the whole Daoist viewpoint is that everything is energy. Everything is energy.
That's what I wanted to call my third book as well. Yeah, energy is everything. Yeah.
And that's the point. And this, when you go higher, there's certain monks and there's certain people in China and Tibet especially that I've studied with and talked to, and they talk about the ancient ones, and the ancient ones totally knew everything was energy. They talked about, in actual fact, in Sanskrit, in the ancient Sanskrit language, in Tibet, in India, also in China, there was something in particular. They talk about the 5 spirits, but when they talk about 5 spirits, they literally meant 5 energy layers that are connected to the consciousness. Your consciousness was these 5 energy layers, and there was a 6th one that bound them together, and those were what became, from the ancient system, what became the meridians, the chakras, the auras, the Merkaba, and Tridial field were these layers that we're talking about. So this is, but it's basically in line with what you're saying. And then another side of Daoism, they actually did stuff called simply translated was called folding, where they could fold time, because Buddhists very much believe in reincarnation, so they would talk about past lives. Daoists believed about past, but also about future lives, and also what they called side lives, as in what modern day science would call multi-dimensional. So alternative universes, you know, the old Star Trek, original Star Trek. And so they would talk. They had techniques where, just like you're talking about, this is why it's so fascinating for me, and what I sort of mentioned in that message. Well, they had techniques where you could either sidetrack to another dimension, where instead of turning left, you went right, and in a little bit, there was a movie called Sliding Doors. I don't know if you saw it.
I remember that.
And in essence, you know, like you could go to an alternative place where you did something else, and that thing happened. So you know, you ended up being, they didn't have it in ancient China, but you ended up being a brain surgeon or an astronaut or whatever. But they also did future stuff as well, go in the future. And like you say, that again, you're one of the few people I know of that actually say about this, about regression, because most people do past regression. But they talk about when you go there and you start, you know, you find out what you need to do. The whole thing in ancient law is what you focus on focuses on you. So you attract, you're attracting that future. So you can change futures by attracting them.
It's an interesting one, because people often say to me, when you go to the future, is it going to be different next time you look? And I would just say the very act of going into the future and seeing it, yes, you're going to change it. You're going to change immediately your energy and what you're about to do. So yes, the very act of seeing it, you'll change it. You'll improve it. But you will change it for sure.
I had something
sorry, go on.
I had something I wanted to add about your perspective on considering yourself not spiritual. I think that gives you an amazing advantage in this situation, to consider yourself not to be super spiritually deep, because you won't take yourself as seriously. You won't take the experiences you're having as seriously. So it's going to lead, from my experience, like, if you don't have doubt, if you just have blind faith, then you're going to go all sorts of places that you have no business going, because you're just believing what's being told to you. But if you doubt, I mean, some of the most powerful healers that I've encountered in my life, and some of the most powerful experiences I've had, were blinded by when their doubt was finally destroyed. You know, because they had that experience. Like I had the first time I ever astral projected. You know, I was like untouchable for a couple weeks because nothing mattered. In like, oh, what? I'm gonna be late for work. Oh, yeah, whatever. You know, like nothing could, on a certain level, nothing could touch me. Even like, you know, because even the fear of death had been taken from my consciousness, and it slowly works its way back in, you know, in the subconscious. But even having that, so I think if anything, this gives you a clearer perspective, allows you to have a more uncluttered lens, because you're coming from this place of, instead of being like, oh, I'm so spiritual and I'm experiencing this, that, and the other, you're going, oh, well, that just happened, so I can't really deny that just happened, and that just happened, so I can't really deny that. So I have a thing about truth and faith, you know. Truth is understanding something, faith is believing in something. So like a priest has faith in God, and he shares his faith with you. But a shaman has had a shaman's experience and a shaman's life, and has been through his personal trials, and has his personal experience with God, so he can tell you about his personal experience with God. So he has the truth of it. And that's why you see shamans as healers are much more effective at healing than priests are.
Because it's their reality.
Yeah, exactly.
Their own reality. Yeah.
It's fully integrated. It's not just something that somebody said, hey, you should give this a try. And they go, okay. And they try it, and it works out okay for them. It's all based on their personal heartfelt experiences that were completely tailored to their existence. So I think, if anything, I would say your perceived lack of spirituality is actually a great boon, and almost a more pure form of spirituality from my perception.
Oh, that's really nice, because I'm just thinking, are you familiar with Stuart Wilde?
No, I'm not.
He's my favorite teacher. And he used to talk about the Tao all the time. He was very grounded. In fact, sometimes he was quite naughty. He was quite an outrageous. Yeah, he was naughty, quite an outrageous character. But I've learned more from Stuart Wilde than from anybody. Absolutely from anybody. That guy is amazing. But he was the first time I'd heard about the Tao, and he just said you've got to be able to bring it into your real life. That's what he said. It's no good sitting on top of a mountain and being spiritual, and there's a superiority in being this terribly spiritual. And he said, you've got to be able to hold it off to the bank. You've got to pay your bills. You've got to put food on the table. How do you treat people? He said, you can act all spiritual and look down on other people that aren't. Forget it. You've got to bring the Tao into the real life. So I used to love reading. Unfortunately, he died a couple of years ago, but he's my favourite. I've learned more from that man than from anybody. Yeah, his books are quite down to earth. You know, they're very matter of fact. And I think that's what my greatest influence has been. Yeah, you've got to live in the real world as well. You've got to be able to live in the real world, you know.
Yeah, there's one of my favorite sayings is don't become so holy that you become useless on earth.
Yeah.
And that's one of the tests that the devil gives Jesus. Is Jesus goes to the top of I can't remember exactly. He goes to the top of a church or a religious building, and the devil's like, jump off of this, and Jesus basically says, no, I'm human. Still, I'm still a human. I'm still I still breathe. I still have this physical body. Sure, I'm on this amazing level of consciousness, but I'm gonna you can't cheat the rules of God. To me, you can't argue with gravity. Gravity doesn't care about your opinion.
Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. So I don't know that much about the Tao, but Stuart Wilde mentioned it a lot, and I'd always listen to him. Look him up on YouTube. You'll love Stuart Wilde. He is just so funny. He's quite funny. He's quite funny. He's quite outrageous, and also bringing it back to that grounding. I remember years ago, I went to a ball. I don't normally go to balls. I've only got one frock, but I got invited to a ball, and it was a thing to go to. And I went along, and afterward they were going to a nightclub. So I've got this fine dress on for a change, shoes I can't walk in. And we went to a nightclub, and it was real dance music, and with all these spiritual people with this real proper dance music. And there's a yoga teacher with us, and he said, I don't like this. This music is so base chakra. It's so base chakra. And I went, we probably all need it if we're working with spiritual stuff. We probably need some base chakra stuff to get us down to earth. But, go and dance a bit crazy and enjoy yourself. Perhaps that's what we need to do.
Like primal dance.
It is primal. Yeah. Yeah, that's what we need. We need to be primal.
we need to remember that we're human. That's part of my whole mission with Mythigare and sacred play and sacred violence. Sacred violence is the other half of sacred play.
Go on, tell me about sacred violence. Now this interests me.
So sacred violence, and this is all just my perception, of course. My perception is, so you have sacred play. Native Americans, during their Sundance Festival every year, they have sacred clowns that are going around to remind us all that there's humor in life. While at the same time, the Braves are, they take a fold of their skin on their back and they put a cherry stake through it. And then they tie a buffalo skull to it and they drag the buffalo skull around until it gets ripped out. I know, right? Really epic. But that's to represent the suffering that happens in the universe. Now, from my observations of the universe, I base a lot of my stuff on my observations of the world. Mother Nature has compassion. She has a very beautiful form of compassion that we don't recognize as compassion, and that is violence. And that violence manifests itself as, when animals become sick or get too old, rather than Mother Nature keeping them alive, keeping them suffering, she comes in and ends them. The old elk when the elk gets old and sickly, a wolf comes in and eats it. So it doesn't have to experience the full degeneration of its existence to the point where it's immobilized and then dies. It is taken up far before that. So to me, violence is compassion. I mean, there's a lot of people that's a really big trigger for a lot of people because, violence is so incredibly misused in the world today. Yeah. I don't condone violence in that form. But violence is just as much a part of life as play is. So to me, it's sacred violence. So what a big thing for me in the world that I find myself continually running into in situations is people who have lost touch with their aggression.
Yeah.
Because anger is a very powerful thing. Anger is there to get you out of a really bad situation.
To protect yourself. You got to be able to protect yourself. Yeah.
It becomes distorted. I mean, Deepak Chopra, I believe, says that an emotion only lasts in your body for like 45 seconds to a minute, the chemical reaction of an emotion. So if you get angry, it only lasts for 45 seconds to a minute. Then you have to tell yourself a story to continue to be angry. Like, oh, this person did this and this is wrong.
That's interesting.
Or your judgment comes in to keep it going. But ultimately that anger is there to help you survive. So I encounter people who are in situations where they've lost touch with their anger, and because of usually the damage that's been done by angry people, and their relationship to it, and try and reintroduce them to their relationship with anger and healing in a balanced form, and not the out of balance form of, all violence is bad. Violence has its place, in my opinion. Violence is a sacred act as long as it's treated as a sacred thing. The wolf killing the old elk is an act of compassion of Mother Nature. We just have this human conception of what it looks like. And I believe personally that's all connected to the ego of, we want things to stay alive forever. Nothing in this world is permanent. I mean, to me, a museum is a monument of our desire to hold on to the past. We put all of these objects that no longer serve optimally in this museum, and then we go and look at it and glorify it.
Do you know Carrie Mullis? He's a Nobel.
No, I don't.
Carrie Mullis is quite a dude, actually. He wrote an amazing book called Dancing Naked in the Mind Field, and he's quite an interesting guy. And he said, in the time we're in now, we talk about the world's getting hotter or colder. He said the world's always got hotter and colder. He said that a species is dying out, and in our arrogance, we try to stop it dying out. He says species come, species go. At some point, we'll die out. Who are we to be so arrogant to think we can change that? That Absolutely. Is how you'd love Carrie Mullis. He was actually he's a surf dude, and he won the Nobel Prize for his work on DNA and genetics, and he got the core, and of course he was announced as the winner, and he was out surfing. So it's the last thing you expect for a Nobel scientist to be out surfing, and he had to go he's an amazing guy. You'd love him. He went out to Sweden to collect his prize, and he said to the King of Sweden, "If you give me half your land, I'll marry your daughter," which didn't actually go down too well. I thought it was quite funny, but nobody else did. He's quite an outrageous guy, but really clever. But I loved what he said about evolution. Yeah, things die out. We got to come and go. It mustn't get hotter or colder now. Why? It always has done.
Yeah, absolutely. We have this idea that we want to remove ourselves from the cycle, and the cycle is there. I mean, and that's ultimately where the suffering comes from, is when we try and remove ourselves from the cycle. So to touch back on sacred violence for a second, so that's the idea of my whole premise with cloth weapons and whatnot, is to help people reconnect with their inner violence, because all you're going to do is deny a part of yourself.
Yeah.
I
get it.
Deny a part of yourself, all sorts of hideous things start happening. I mean, look at the world and how demented our relationship is with sex. Look at the Western world, because we deny our sexuality. It's a proven fact, as far as genetics go, that if a woman has multiple sperm donors, she will create a stronger child, because her body will naturally sort through the sperm and find the DNA that best is compatible with hers, and will make a stronger child. Now, that being said, polyamory in our culture, because of our programming, just doesn't work. But
it's interesting, because I've got a friend that's polyamory, and I can't see how it can work, because at some point our human nature, emotions seem to.
I've been watching it for a while. I have a lot of friends who are that way, and my observation is that ultimately, yes, on an animalistic level, that is what we're programmed for. That's, if you look at all of our monkey relatives, the bonobos are one of my favorite example. The bonobo chimps actually have prostitution in their culture.
How do they pay them? Oh, don't tell me.
I've seen the video. It's fantastic.
I don't want to know how these girls get paid. Oh, how funny.
A male monkey walks up with a bunch of grapes and hands it to the female.
Wow.
And that's the payment. So ultimately, to me, that just illustrates our relationship to it and how we have this relationship to it of it being this bad thing when ultimately, as far as I'm concerned, I do construction for a living. I'm prostituting myself. I'm living the prostitute archetype because I'm selling my body for something that I don't necessarily, that is not incongruent with my personal dream.
Yeah.
So
in essence,
it's semantics.
But polyamory is a different thing because
Absolutely.
Maybe it will work. Sometimes I think the world sorts us out and sorts the situation out. If we didn't have many people on Earth and we needed more people, maybe it'd be more normal to be polyamory. Now that we've really got to get into the point where we've got too many people, maybe it comes back. So we don't produce so many children. If that's the case, polyamory will bring out more kids. So that's why I think we've got more gay people now. I think more people are gay. I don't think it's more people are brave enough to say it. I think more people are gay or bi or asexual. And maybe that's because that's what we need right now. We need less people to be having kids. I think the world adjusts itself in some ways.
I absolutely agree. So all this basically to say is we have to remember how human we are, and then we have to work within those parameters instead of trying to deny our human and then work within those parameters. So the people who deny that they have an angry side, I don't get angry. Everybody gets angry about something. If you're not getting angry, you're not in touch with yourself at some point. And then of course, and this is where the consciousness then steps in, is recognizing the story you're telling yourself, recognizing there's a great book by Marshall Rosenberg called Nonviolent Communication where
I've got it up here. I've got it.
Oh my God!
I've got it.
I love
Where have
that
I
book
got it?
so
I've
much.
got it on my shelf somewhere.
Yes.
It's
Fantastic. Have you read it?
Not yet. Whoops. There you go.
It will change your life. It changed my life. It changed my partner at the time's life, and it changed my stepdaughter's life. It's all about language and the language that you use and being aware of these things. So in Marshall's opinion, it all boils down to needs and unmet needs. So when people are upset, it's because they've lost touch with what their need is and they're not honoring the need that they have to be met. So that's what anger comes from, is when we're having a need that's not being met and it's not, and we're not okay with it, basically. So recognizing what our need is, and then being able to work within those parameters. So you start with the animal emotion not being met, and then you move on to, then your conscious mind can kick in and say, okay, how can I deal with this in an adequate way? So the synergy between the two, the balance between yin and yang, or the Tai Chi symbol, or light and dark, or however you want to look at it, ultimately that balance is not being addressed of we are human and we have consciousness, so we need to integrate the two of them together.
Yeah.
So that being said, so many people in the spiritual community are so against violence of any kind. Like, I know midwives who won't take herbs to keep themselves from getting pregnant because they consider that a denial of life.
That's crazy, isn't it? My spiritual teacher was I had a spiritual teacher when I was young, and she was pretty down to earth. And one day I was really annoyed with somebody I had in my life. I was so angry. And I thought, she's such an amazing spiritual woman. And she said, Anne, what's going on? You don't look quite right. And I said, to be honest, I know I should be all spiritual and nicey, but I am so angry with this person. I said, I feel like really hitting them. I feel like really, really hitting them. I was waiting for her to tell me off and say, well, go and meditate or whatever. And she went, do you know what that's called? I went, what? She said, it's called being human. It just gave me permission to be human and to be angry, and it was justified.
Anymore. That's totally it. I totally agree. Nobody gets permission to be angry. Nobody gets permission to, I did martial arts for a couple of years. I have a human-shaped punching bag in my storage unit. I wail on him all the time because that's just a part of us, that aggression, that need to go out and do things in the world. And ultimately, again, it comes back to consciousness. How do I want that to manifest? I don't drink, but I could be going out into bars and pubs and getting in bar fights, or I could go to my storage unit and beat up this human-shaped bag instead, and still have the same synergy and still have the same need being met for my humanness. But because my consciousness is stepping in.
So the Eastern point of view, the whole Eastern point of view, and I talk about the Tao a lot. But again, Tao simply means, you know, the way, the path. You've got American Tao, the American Indians, they're Daoists. The Inuits, they're Daoists. The Aboriginals, they're Daoists. And Daoist is about finding your own personal balance.
Yeah.
Now, in martial art,
Yeah.
there's a very good reason why the martial is about the order, about the structural, about practice. Constant practice builds up your energy. Martial arts is far more about personal development than it ever is about fighting. In actual fact, especially in the internal or the soft arts like Tai Chi, Bakwa, singing, all these names probably mean something or nothing. Doesn't matter, irrelevant. But in these arts, they talk about the 3 ones or the 3 M's, which is martial, meditational, and medical. So the martial side is also fitness. So it's about getting physical fit. But each one of these relates to the other 2 as well. So the whole point of the martial arts side is also relates to the mind. So it relates to your emotions. So martial arts, you know, going and as Q does, Ethan does, going and punching your life-size voodoo doll is cool. You know, you give it a good bashing. But this is why, like now, we've got, you know, because of Q, we've got the Warhammers. And we went to, there was a great camp. I've got some very pagan friends, and we went to a camp just about a month ago called Colours of the Oak. And so it's a very spiritual camp, very, very beautiful. They did meditation, tarot cards, they did all this stuff. But we had the Warhammer tournament. And you had everybody from 4-year-old kids all the way up to who's the oldest? I think he was about 65, 70, who'd grab a Warhammer, and we did it as a martial competition. So you was in a ring, we created a ring, and it was quite simple, like, you know, a hit on the head would be 2 points, hit on the body, the front of the body would be 1 point. The refs have the final decision, so it's fun, but it's controlled at the same time, which is what sports originally was all about. The whole competitions in the martial arts was this: it was controlled but uncontrolled. You had this play. So you know, we had.
It's about movement of energy as well, isn't it? It's like you let the energy out. It's like Woody Allen said, "I hold all my anger in, and instead I grow a tumor." You know, let the energy out. You know, let the energy flow out. Let it flow. And if you're angry, sometimes it's good. Do you know, when I was a kid, my best friend's brother was quite well known in England. I don't think he's in America. But he was known as the king of the hippies. This is back in the 60s. He was the king of the hippies, and he started TP Valley up in Wales, and he was this amazing spiritual guy, and everyone saw him as a bit of a guru. John Lennon bought him an island off the coast of Scotland. So he was quite a dude in his day. Anyway, one day we played a trick on him, and we being horrible kids, we played a trick on him. And we gave him this sweet that wasn't a sweet. He was chewing on it for ages, but it was actually a bubble thing for a bath. It was like a bubble bath thing. So he chewed on it for ages. All of a sudden, his bubbles burst into his mouth. Oh my God, I thought he was going to kill us. I'm so glad his followers didn't see it, because he chased us down that road and we feared for our life. You know, the guru was going to kill his little sister and her friend. The anger come out.
Oh, totally. It's really important. I was a really angry child, like a very angry child, because of my disability, because of my dyslexia and autism and stuff like that. And I'm here to tell you that as an adult, I would rather break something small than hold that energy inside of me. I'd rather get
it'll make you ill. You hold it in, it'll make you ill.
Oh, it feels terrible. I'm a firm believer that's why people ultimately lash out in anger, is because that feeling, that energy tone inside of you don't want that inside you. That energy's got to go somewhere. So you got to let it out somewhere. So you got to have a controlled environment. You have to have the consciousness to direct the energy in the way that it needs to go, so it's going to do the least damage. But absolutely, I think, because that otherwise that's a denial of a part of an aspect of your humanness, which is ultimately yourself.
Absolutely.
And as soon as you start denying any part of yourself, then you're going to start getting into dis-ease. And when you sit in dis-ease long enough, then you become dead. Yeah,
exactly. It will make you ill. And that's why people get headaches and stomach aches. It's holding all, because a lot of people are in situations where they're angry, but they can't actually say. That's why I like your beating up your voodoo thingy, your voodoo person, because if you've got a horrible boss, you can hardly go and just scream at him and call him bad names because you're going to get the sack. So that's what, or our mother-in-law or our partner. Often we can't always say what we want to say. So go and beat the hell. Maybe you should manufacture these. Maybe everyone should have one.
I'm making. I'm going to be launching soon. I'm going to be making. I have truth bombs. They're like little plush bombs that you throw at people so you can tell them the truth. So it softens the blow.
Wow.
I'll send you a picture of one later. They're around.
Please. Yeah, they sound good.
I will be launching those on Kickstarter within the next month, hopefully. That's my
good
first,
one. Yeah,
my first thing. And then there'll be axes and hammers and throwing starfish and throwing lemon. Because when life gives you lemons, you can just throw them back at life.
Sidetracking a little bit from the truth bombs and the voodoo dolls and everything else. It's like, this is when people say about, I detest violence, it's like, hold up, people have great respect for this. The Shaolin monks are Buddhists. Buddha Rama, this is the biggest thing. Buddha Rama went to, I think it was, I always get this wrong, somebody will tell me off. I think it's around about the 14th century that Buddha Rama Minor and went to the northern temple, the Shaolin temple, and he said, you are all very spiritual, but you're fat and unfit. So he taught them yoga, but he told them to go out into the world and find other exercises. So they studied the animals, and that's where, Shaolin Kung Fu is a spiritual practice. It's one of the things.
Absolutely.
They use it, and this is where when people say, violence, but then when you hear, or they say, I'm a very spiritual person, but then they say, I hate this and I hate that, and you're holding, let it out, go.
You often find spiritual people are really bottling it up, but what happens is they get passive aggressive, so they get a little snipey and look down on other people and slag off each other's work rather than just. I'm a big fan of martial arts films, so I love martial arts films. I can watch them round the clock, so I love that energy. I love that freedom of movement.
Have you ever seen? It was a sort of martial arts / sky fight. It's actually sort of what we're talking about in a way. Have you ever seen Jet Li, the actor / martial artist, Jet Li, in the film The One?
Do you know, I don't think I've seen that, but I will watch it.
You should see it. It's really good.
Need to see it. For so many reasons,
I'm writing it down.
You need to see it.
Yes.
So it's Jet Li, so it's the actor Jet Li, and the movie was The One.
I've already got it written down. I will get that. I will order it. And I love the martial arts.
Yeah. Well, it goes into the a style called Bakwa, which is the 8 trigram, which is walking the circles, and then another version of him. This is why you need to see it. Another version of him does Xing Yi, which is the very straight line. It's actually about the 5 elements. One is about the 8 trigrams, which you've ever heard of the I Ching, straight line.
Oh yeah, I've got I Ching here. I've got the sticks in my dad's office.
You got a proper I Ching then, cool.
Oh yeah, I've got the shaky sticks, I always call them. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got them in my dad's office.
China. Cool. Because in 2 ways in China, you either do it with coins or you do it with shaking sticks. Yeah. The shaking sticks was the more traditional way. It's when you do it and it flies up and pokes you in the eye, and then your reader goes, the future is poking you in the eye. This one's really important. So, very, very funny. Or at least that's what used to happen to me. Maybe it's funny. But anyway. So so he's doing walking these circles, and it's called Bakwa Chang, which is 8 trigram palm, and that represents part of the I Ching. The other one that he does this thing when my camera's going to. If I go too fast, it'll blur. But he's doing all this straight line stuff and doing different things with his hands and moves, and that's called Xing Yi, and Xing Yi is 5 elements. Right. Xing Yi Chuan, which is 5 element fist or boxing, but what it is, it's a dimensional thing where they found a way to go to another multi-universe.
Wow.
And the 2 selves one accidentally killed the other, and it was a bit like Highlander. He drained the power from that universe. Then he started going round from multiverse to multiverse, killing off all the other versions of himself.
Wow.
And
Wow.
that's what the movie's about. But it's awesome.
I will get that. My son-in-law will be annoyed with me because he's a big Jet Li fan, huge Jet Li fan. So if he knows I'm on here, and I've actually gone, no, I haven't actually seen that because I love Bruce Lee. My favourite all-time film is actually Kill Bill, which does horrify people, but I absolutely love. That's the film I can watch every week. I don't watch many films more than once, but I could watch that every week. Every minute of that film to me is perfect. You know, just about that about the will, about having so much will. Toe move. 13 hours later, the toe moves. I love that. I love everything about that film, and people are quite horrified by the fact I love it, but everything in it is about control, taking control of your life, making things happen. Oh God, it's so perfect.
Totally. Well, I think it's a great statement on you because that's such a human movie to me. Like it's so about the humanness and the experience of living on Earth, and you know, all things are about perspective. So on a certain level, Earth is really dark and scary and violent and like not a nice place to live.
It can be scary, but it's about love as well. It's about extreme,
but then of course,
such extreme love.
Yeah, you can't have the really scary without having it go exactly as far in the other direction, which is the extreme love, because you have to have the totality, you have to have the balance of it.
Yeah.
So I personally, because I look at people a lot. I try to look at as many things about them as I can, from the way they moved, to the way they talked, to the words they use, the things that they're interested in, the way they relate to animals, the way they relate to people, their relationships, and all that. Because it helps me to understand people. I really like what that says about your humanness, about that recognition of that. Which goes back to the other statement about you not really feeling like a super spiritual person. Again, that is a great statement because you're not standing there going, I'm the shit. Look at me. Aren't I great? You know, you're just like, wow, this happened. Okay. And then this happened. And then this happened. You're not walking around with this, you know, shiny Technicolor suit on going, look at this suit. You know, you have, what was it you said earlier? A nice blue suit, you know, a nice kind of camouflage, kind of on the down, like not really out there creating waves, because ultimately I'm a big fan of thinking of people as streams. You know, you have the water running along the top of the stream, and that's what most people see, and that's most people's perception. But underneath is a hard layer of bedrock. And so you don't want to mess with the rocks underneath. Most people just look at the stream and assume that's all that's there. So ultimately, you're a very unassuming stream, and because of that, it gives you more power because you're more balanced, because you're not getting distracted by yourself.
That's a nice thing. That's a nice way to look at it, because I just a lot of my friends are actually childlike, and they're like disobedient children. A lot of my friends have that energy where they'll go, shan't, don't have to. They have that little rebel, and they really enjoy themselves. They absolutely. I've got friends from every walk of life you can think of, every walk. But I find my old friends, because as I said, I come from a poor background. They don't have any money, or they have very little money, but they laugh all the time. They are forever laughing. They love every minute. They've had tragedies. They love every minute, and that's what I find quite fabulous about them. So I love being around that energy of people that are just down to earth, enjoy life, but also know how to live life in a good way. You know, I think there's a decent way to live.
That's the balance of the totality, and that's why that's the trickster god energy. The trickster god energy is horribly misunderstood. I'm a big fan of the trickster god energy. Coyote has been a huge part of me for my life, which is the Native American trickster deity. But ultimately, the duality of the wise fool, because you need to know when to be wise and when to be an idiot, and to be able to balance the two. Because if you can run around and be a fool and have a great time, then that's part of the thing with going back to the Tao of Pooh that Boggie was talking about earlier. So the ones that he didn't talk about is Tigger, which is the ego, which is look at me, I'm the greatest. That's what Tiggers do best. You know, and then you've got Piglet, which is the self-doubt, which is, oh, I'm scared and I can't do anything. And then there's Eeyore, which is, just the mopey, depressed bastard who oh,
Oh,
God,
yeah.
I know so many heroes.
oh.
Oh,
Ultimately,
like,
you want to
you remember
have that.
Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy?
Oh yeah,
Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Marvin, my
Marvin,
friends,
totally.
I'm so miserable. Yeah,
Totally.
I know quite a few of them as well. But anyway,
He's miserable because he has too much knowledge, because he has forgotten how to play.
How to play is the most. Yeah, it's really important to play. That's why I like my friends. They know how to play. They'll never stop playing.
Absolutely. And that's what so many people find so attractive and endearing in a lot of people. Like me and Boggie have talked about this a lot, because we both have that kind of energy about us.
We are the Chaos Brothers.
Yeah. Where we'll run around, and it's the time, and ultimately it in the greater extremes, like you see this in astrology, and like Geminis, for instance, is a great example, because Gemini is the twins. You can have, if they're balanced, you can have an amazing experience of totality, because you will be at both ends of the extreme, and you will will vacillate between them. And as long as you're flowing between the two states, it's all good.
Yeah.
Of course, problems arise when you get stuck in one state or another state, but our world is not built to have that state. So people are drawn to that because people need the duality. We need to be able to laugh and play and fight and pass through all of those things, and not hold on to them as like, oh, I'm not an angry person.
So said about the signs, that's why the books, they tend to say put a Gemini with another air sign. I think the last thing they need is another air sign, because the two of them are going to float off out into the ether.
I know, it's terrible.
I like Geminis with an earth signs, because the earth signs get stuck. So you've got a Gemini going, no, we're going to the seaside. We're going to go off and have fun. And every so often the earth sign will go, no, we've got to come back down to earth and pay some bills and do some work here. So I love the balance. When somebody said to me once, I said, all my friends are water signs, but I'm fire. Loads of water signs. She said, yeah, because you need that, because you've got so much fire, you need the water.
Totally. I mean, it's prevalent everywhere. And my personal astrology, my sun is Virgo, so it's earth, really grounded in methodical thought processes. And then my moon, which is my emotions, is Gemini. Yeah.
That's a great balance, though, isn't it?
So it's all over the place. And then my rising's Cancer, so...
Well, a crab never goes in a straight line. It always goes side by side. So you're going to be...
I'm set. I'm set for this job. I don't know what my job is, but I'm set for it. So... Actually, that's not true. I do know what my job is. My job is to bring sacred violence and sacred play back into the world. And
I love it. I think that's really cool. I've never heard of sacred violence before, and I think it's really interesting.
I'm not exactly sure if it's like a well-known topic or anything. I kind of made it.
Well, it is now. The free ones. So martial arts is really important, but so is meditation. And meditation is purely do one thing, forget everything else. So swimming's a meditation. Fishing's a meditation. Sewing is a meditation. Hitting your voodoo doll as hard as you can is a meditation. But in martial arts, sacred violence are martial art competitions. Well, actually, technically, the sacred violence would probably close to the training sessions where you're having a bit of a laugh. It's not serious, but you're having a bit of a laugh and trying stuff out. Or at least the training sessions I used to have. I mean, I had two main teachers. One looked very much like Buddha, or the Chinese Buddha, big, slightly big belly, very smiley face, always funny. The other one his brother shouldn't. Very serious most of the time, but both of them could flip. The Poe, the funny one, he could be really serious, and he was actually a quite deadly fighter. And Shun had a very dry sense of humour. But Shun's way of teaching was, if you ask too many questions, if you don't train enough, or if you get things wrong, you get hit. And the whole point he started off with just like a little flick when I was about 11, 12. And by the time I was about 22, it was a steel bar, normally over the back of the head. But the whole point in life, people go, oh, that's terrible, he was hitting you. But like Shaolin Kung Fu, you learn how to be hit. You learn how to hit, and you learn how to get hit. And just like in being a stuntman, you learn how to fall. You know, because the very first thing they teach you, and you love the Chinese martial arts, you have the Chinese opera, and Chinese opera is Chinese martial arts. You know, they learn how to act, they learn how to fall, how to move. So when they do the wire work, you know, when they're all flying in the air, they know how, because those wires will cut into you. So
Absolutely.
you know how to relax the body. And it's all, you know, it's all training, but it's all the same thing. It's
funny because I know quite a few boxers, because some of my friends are proper Romani gypsies, and that is a tradition of boxing. And they said one of the first things you've got to do, if you're frightened of being hit, you'll never be a boxer. You've got to be able to say, I'm going to get hurt here. I'm going to get hurt. And you've got to be okay with that. That's one of the first things you've got to come to terms with. You're going to get hurt. Allow yourself to get hurt. Then you can be a boxer. Do you watch any Stephen Chow?
Yes.
That's exactly what you're saying. The fun, the laughter, the amazing martial arts. It's that fun child. He's one of my favourite people. I mean, he writes, he directs, he acts. I mean, the guy's a genius. I'm waiting for Kung Fu Hustle 2. I've been waiting a long time for that film. Can't wait for it to come out. The guy,
love Kung Fu Hustle.
Kung Fu Hustle is amazing.
That's so cool. One of my other ones, it wasn't my Steam Chow, but you ever see Shaolin Soccer?
I love Shaolin Soccer.
Yeah,
I love that Shaolin Soccer. Yeah,
but Kung Fu Hustle. Just go quickly back to there. Kung Fu Hustle is like the whole thing with the musicians that playing. They're doing Farjing, explosive power with the sounds, and you know they're firing musical notes, and the whole thing about sound, the sound energy. But the whole point of that movie is, Ethan, that is sacred violence. You know, the whole
sacred
point
violence.
Love that film. You know, that fighting is a thing, and you have the boss lady of the town. You know, she was almost like is that
the lady with the cigarette?
The woman with the lion's roar, I think is what they call it. The lion's roar.
She was like a Chinese Hilda Ogden, which will mean nothing to. Wasn't she? She was like Hilda Ogden. She was.
Colours in. She had colours in. Yeah, brilliant.
She wasn't Chinese. If Hilda Ogden studied martial arts, she would have looked like that. Now, Ethan has no idea what we're talking about. We're basically talking about a British soap in England called Coronation Street. It's set in sort of up north, and it's been going since the 60s. And
I've heard of it.
Oh, right. Well,
I'm familiar with it. I haven't seen it, though.
No, you would not know that one.
No. If you Google it and get Hilda Ogden, and she looked like that character.
Absolutely, that was hilarious.
Real high-pitched laugh, but the whole point is that and should hit people, but it's that thing of it's just part of the fun. It's part of the violence, and when you get decent martial artists that interact, they're like that all the time. They're hitting each other, but the point is, it's not violent because you know how to hit, and therefore you know how to be hit, so it doesn't actually hurt. That's the point. I used to do one of my big passions, even knows, ice hockey and skating, but session skating, which is a big thing in the UK, not a very big thing in America. They don't have it as much like we do in the UK. But I used to do little crazy demonstrations where they'd get a hockey stick and they'd ram it in between my legs because they love doing it.
That's brutal. Hockey's brutal.
Yeah.
It's
well,
brutal.
I was an enforcer in hockey, and the whole thing was that, oh God, they hit me, bosh. Hit me again, bosh. And one of my biggest things is that I won most of my in a lot of non-competition fighting, if like in skating or whatnot, where people would, the old British terminology of give it the big one, you know, they say, well, go on then, hit me. And I'll just stand there, let them hit me. They'd hit me about 4 or 5 times. Everybody's laughing at them because nothing's happening. And then that's it. That's the end of the fight. And it's, I haven't thrown a punch, and I won. I haven't thrown a punch. And that was the thing. I was notoriously known for that. Is that, you know, is the humour. One of my biggest things is, you know, somebody would be really aggressive and in my face, and if I wasn't on, I used to do close protection. If I wasn't on duty, I would act one way, and if I was on duty, I'd act another. But I wasn't on duty once, and somebody was being really, really aggressive. So I thought I'd send him love. So he was really, really aggressive in my face, and I just leaned forward, grabbed his head, and kissed him on the lips. And everybody, all my mates are bursting out laughing. All these guys go, "Oh my God, oh, he's gay!" Oh. And the blokes go, "Oh, oh, oh," and he like ran off. And it was the most funniest thing they saw. And you know, it's you know, it's.
But it diffuses. It also diffuses. Laughter diffuses anger, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because laughter is the opposite of anger. You can't have anger with laughter.
No.
It just doesn't.
You can't.
It just doesn't work.
You can't hold more than one emotion at the time. That's the whole point.
Wow.
You know, that was the whole point of studying psychology and NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming. When I did all of these, is you know, the understanding, and then of course with the martial arts and tops, and that's why a lot of martial arts said, "Boggie, you're a scary person." You know, all this stuff. You know, it can't handle this. But it's this whole point of, you know, well, my favourite humour is people like Robin Williams, Jim Carrey, Steve Martin. Now, if Steve Martin, did you ever see his version of the movie called Roxanne?
Do you know, I watched a bit. I watched a bit of that. I haven't watched the whole film. I mean, The Man with Two Brains, The Man with Two Brains, and The Jerk.
Roxanne. In Roxanne.
Okay.
Yeah, what's that? He's also got very new. It's actually based on a French film.
I saw some of it. I've seen some of it.
It's based off of a Shakespeare play.
Well,
if I
French
remember
film was,
correctly.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know.
The French film was based off the Shakespeare play. He based it off the French film. And I think it was. I could be wrong here, but I think the French film had Stéphane Depardieu in it. You know, the he's quite
Gerard
Depardieu.
Gerard. Yeah.
Blonde hair, and he had this real big nose, and and it was Steve Martin watched it and then did his version.
Okay, I vaguely remember. I think I watched about 20 minutes of it, and then I had to go out. So I will get to watch it.
It's good.
Well, one of my favourite bits in it, and one thing I've sort of mastered was basically somebody in this bar sort of turned around and said, "Oh, big," you know, like took them, and everybody, "Oh my God, he's going to kill him," and this guy's falling in love, so it's like, "Oh, don't worry," and then he goes, "No, wait. You know, you have this perfect opportunity to mock this," and he like points to his nose, and all you can come up with is big nose. And this bloke tries to give it the big one, and he says, "I bet you I can come up with 20-something betters." And then for this in the film, so there's this about 15 minutes bit in the film where he's basically coming up of 20-something betters to big nose. So it's like he says, you know,
ski slope,
yeah, and you know, it's that God gave you that nose to give birds something to perch on, and you know, and things like this, and he said, "Ladies, if he's got a nose like this, imagine what's down there." And so that was one of my biggest things, is that I learned to use humour in essence as a weapon. You know, if people are attacking you physically or trying to attack you verbally and coming at all discretion, and one of the biggest things I learned as a kid, if you take the mickey out yourself better than anybody else can, you're never going to be offended. Nobody can offend you if you can
Funny
take
enough,
it-
Stuart Wald taught this. He said
Yeah.
when people attack you, agree with them, and they'll go, "You're really
Yeah.
stupid." And you go, "Do you know what? Yeah, I think you're right." And he said, "Just they don't know." And he said the other thing. He said, when you're working and somebody will say, "You charge too much money. You charge too much money for what you're doing." He'll just say, "I'm going to put my prices up. You're right." And they go, No. I'm saying no. You're right. I'm going to put my, and he tells you, and it feels odd. It's like, funny enough, my spiritual teacher said the same thing. You know, I had my first mother-in-law was very, very picky. You know, she's one of these that come around and wipe her finger across the top of things and make sure they're clean. And she'd make little comments, and she'd go, "Oh, haven't had time to hoover today." You know, that type of thing. And my spiritual teacher said, "What you do is go, yeah, I'm lazy. I'm lazy." Because before you justify it and go, "Well, I've been busy and the children kept me busy." And she go, "No, just say, yeah, I'm late. I'll probably be lazy tomorrow as well." It actually diffuses the whole situation. They actually stop being so nasty because they don't know what to do with what you've said.
Yeah,
They
totally.
wait for you to justify it, then they've got power over you.
Totally. I've been running into that my whole life because I used to have long hair. I do have long hair still. But when I was growing up, I had long hair and I had a really high voice and people thought I was a girl. And I've always been emotional and in touch with my feelings. So people mock me for being a girl. So I've gotten to the point now where a guy will say that to me and I'll be like, "Oh, it's funny because you're implying that I'm a woman, so therefore I'm weak." Ha! That's funny. So you actually like call them out on the joke, and then they kind of have to stop.
Yeah.
Go, "Oh, you know what I mean?" Because like from my perspective, men don't do anything nearly as hardcore as grow another being inside them for 9 months and then like push it out of them. That's way more hardcore than anything a guy can do. So in my book, women are stronger than men. I mean, they live 5 years longer. They handle stress better. I think that's why they live longer.
I do think women handle stress better. Yeah, for sure. I do think women handle stress better.
So ultimately, like I found that if you call people out on their jokes, even like if people are making jokes and you call them out and point out the bigger perspective on their jokes, it'll shut them down just as fast. Because you're supposed to go, "Oh, he implied that I'm a woman or I'm a girl, so that makes me weak," and then you're supposed to feel that. Yeah. But instead, you say, "Oh yeah, it's funny because you're implying that I'm weak."
You find it funny, then it's not an attack, is it? It can't be an attack if you find it funny.
Yeah, exactly. It completely changes the energy that's coming at you, and the person has no idea how to respond. I think that's the greatest thing is when you can respond to people in a way that they don't know how to, that is so out of the ordinary that they don't know how to react. Like Boggie kissing that guy on the lips with with dealing with conflict. That is so out of the ordinary that people just don't know how to handle it.
They don't know how to handle it.
It's a great place to be. I found myself in this place quite often because I started making my own clothes when I was about 13 or 14. And my mom let me get whatever haircut I wanted ever since I was a little kid because she didn't care. Because she had a decent perspective, like, yeah, it's hair, it'll grow back, whatever. Let him do what he wants to do. Yeah. So when people come at you with a perception and you go completely against their perception, it completely throws them off base and they just don't know how to respond.
Yeah.
It takes their power away from them because now they're in your court because you're the one who is in charge of the situation. You're the one that has the power because you've circumvented their power over you. And now that they don't have power in the situation, they don't know how to respond because usually in those situations, most people are trying to take power so they can be in charge, so they can control the situation. So that way they know how to react to other people. And if you take that power away from them, then it's like pushing pushing somebody over. You know, one of the greatest. I used to do martial arts, and one of my favorite things ever was it was very strict. Like, oh, you do this form, then you do this form, and we're practicing this thing. And there was me and one other guy. He'd been training for about 10 or 11 years, and we would get into it instead of like, oh, this is a punching drill. Well, it starts as a punching drill, but then you're supposed to end up on the ground. But I wouldn't go on the ground, so he would just like shove me over. It was totally not good technique, but I still ended up on the ground. So there was very much this like, oh, you're not going to go down. Well, fine, I'll just slam you in the chest then. Screw the technique. And that ability, and that all goes back to, being able to operate in the now, being able to operate in the flow of Tao, being Winnie the Pooh. Winnie the Pooh, like there's a great story about Winnie the Pooh, where Winnie the Pooh finds a pile of sticks and has this relationship and this interaction with this pile of sticks. Come to find out later, it was Eeyore's house. But because Pooh didn't go into it with a preconceived notion of what a house looked like, he was able to take the moment with these sticks and have a completely different relationship than anybody else.
Absolutely.
So that all ties back to being able to live in the moment. That gives you access to not being like, okay, I mean, a great example is food. If you don't go into a concept with this is how this certain dish is prepared and you try and prepare it in a different way, then it will open you to a whole new possibility. And then if you're like, this food has to taste exactly like this, you must use this amount of spice, you must use this amount of whatever. And then if it comes out wrong, you're going to be like, oh no, it came out wrong, instead of just being like, some spice and some, I mean, there's levels and understanding and knowledge that needs to go into that. But ultimately, you need to unlearn, it's a giant thing in martial arts, and Bruce Lee has a quote about this, and I've always loved it. And it was something along the lines of, or when I first learned a punch was so many things. There's all these mechanics that you have to learn in the technique, and then you have to unlearn the punch and forget the punch, so that way you can have access to it. It's like it goes back to that metaphor of the rocks underneath the water. Sure, you can give way as a being, but still have your core foundation where if somebody runs into it, they're not going anywhere. They just ran into solid bedrock. There's nothing you can do about it. So having the ability to know when to be serious and know when to be playful, and the discernment ultimately is one of the greatest tools in my experience.
It kind of comes back to when I first started talking about energy, sort of saying that somebody can ruin your day by telling you look awful or telling you you're a horrible person. Straight away your energy drops. If you've got that ability to go, yeah, I really didn't bother brushing my hair, you're right, I put on the stupidest clothes, straight away you're in your humor and you've totally deflected their negative energy. It's not going to affect you, it's not going to hurt you.
Absolutely. Have
you read the book Celestine Prophecies?
Yes, great, isn't it?
Because that talks all about energy, this whole play that we do with energy.
Do you know what I find amazing about that book? Because I've got so many people to read it when it comes out. It's such an amazing book. Everybody seems to get stuck on a different chapter. And it's as if you get stuck on the chapter that you need to read. Because I'd say, one person said, funny enough, they were Romanis, and Romanis, you very much, you're the parent, that's the child, and there's a chapter about how you learn from your children, and they just said, I cannot get that. For me, it was the control dramas. I just couldn't get beyond that chapter for ages, because I kept thinking about, that's what my mother does, that's what my father does, therefore that's why I'm like that. And I just kept seeing everywhere I went, I started to see the control dramas and the different, so that Celestine Prophecy, it's almost as if it brings out different things for different people. Love that book.
I think that's what a great manuscript or book or teacher or anything along those lines will bring up is because ultimately it's like music. What makes music popular is that it's speaking about a universal truth that everyone can understand. That's why heartbreak is such a popular concept in music, because it's touching on these universal truths that we all understand, but we all have different relationships. That's why there's like the blues and classical music and ballads and all of those things that are all talking about sadness that we're experiencing from the loss of a love, but it's all in the slightly different context, the slightly different flavor that everyone needs to experience it in. So to me, a book like that is fantastic for stuff like that, because it covers so many things that everyone will have their own relationship with that specific truth that we all have inside ourselves that just manifests.
Absolutely. I think it's incredible, but I haven't read the 10th Insight. I must get around. I know some people didn't like it, but I must get around to reading the 10th Insight, because he wrote a book afterwards.
I'm trying to think. Was there 11th as well? I think there's a couple other books after it, if I remember rightly. But see, because I went from this Eastern Daoist point of view, and they talk about energy. Everything is as energy. Everything's vibration. So your emotions are energy. And the difference in the Eastern point of view, they see mind and emotion different to thought. So where we think thought and mind is the same thing, they see emotional mind in your heart. So your different emotions are the different plays there, and then thought. So inspiration and is classed as spirit. So Shen. So your thoughts reside in your spirit. So you have an idea for banana chocolate milkshake. So that's an idea. Then if love, that's activated from the heart, so from Jing. So Shen is the idea. Jing is the oh yeah, I really love the idea of banana chocolate milkshake. And then you physically drink it or you physically do it, and that will require chi. So there's this concept of everything is the free one. So on this level, they're talking about Shen, or Shen, Jing, and Qi, or Qi, Jing, and Shen. They're talking about mind, body, spirit. So things start off in the spirit, start off as a thought, and in psychology, they talk about you have thousands of thoughts every day, but it's only particular ones that you actually hook onto and actually, you put emotions into them. And this is then the whole thing in psychology about, people's and positive, or tend to either be in a positive mode or a negative mode. So you can have lots of positive thoughts, but if you're in a negative mode, you'll only focus on those negative thoughts and you'll ignore the positive ones. So a bit like the book, the whole thing of people with books is that if they're in a certain viewpoint, they'll only see that certain thing. I've had a conversation before where I've said so many things, and certain people will only pick on a certain point and go, oh, okay, you're in mindset, you won't see that. It's like, for example, one of the Daoist sayings, that says there is no good or bad, it just is. Everything
it just is, yeah.
And people say, oh, how can you say there is no good or bad? No, not bad. Bad exists, this exists, death is terrible, and da-da-da-da. It's yes, but what are you going to eat? If everything is sacred, which it is, everything is sacred, but if animals are sacred, of course they are, but so are plants. Plants are alive. Science has actually proven you pull off a leaf off a plant, and it emits a frequency that can be considered a scream.
Yes, absolutely. Clive Baxter's research, absolutely.
Yep.
I've had a problem with vegans for that reason. The militant vegans and vegetarians. Because when I was growing up, I was homeschooled. I was raised by a very spiritual person. I grew up hugging a tree. I had my tree that I went and hugged every morning when I went out and took care of our animals that we kept as pets. And to me, the concept, I see no difference between an animal and a plant. And in fact, if anything, I think the animal stands a better chance because that carrot isn't going to be able to get up and run away.
Absolutely. Okay, let me ask you.
That you planted in your backyard and grew strategically so you could eat it, had to watch you come and rip out its brothers out of the ground every day as you eat another carrot until you get to eating that carrot. That's some pretty epic shit for that carrot to go through, if you ask me,
So let me ask you a question. How can you tell a vegan? They will tell you.
I tell vegans. Vegans this. They get really upset.
They always tell you if they're vegan. They will always, at some point, tell you that they're a vegan. They have to.
Oh yes, totally. It's vegans and atheists are usually pretty good about sharing.
I've got atheists attacking me on Twitter at the moment. Oh, they're hilarious. They're really, and they just keep. They got two things. They're not expecting me to answer. This is where you come up with the violence, spiritual violence, because it's quite interesting because they expect me to roll over. Of course, I'm quite what we call in England gobby. I will defend myself and I speak up. I don't justify anything, but I'm quite gobby. So they have a go, and I just go, "That's a really stupid question. Ask me something cleverer." And they're just floored. They take a week. To come back. They seriously do. And all I keep getting is one of them saying, "Ha ha, but you've not won the lottery." And I just say, "How do you know I haven't? You don't know I haven't won the lottery. You don't know that." And he'll come back and go, "Ha ha, but none of you have won the lottery." And I go, "You've asked me that." And he just keeps repeating. I had another bunch about 2 years ago on Twitter, kept popping up, asking questions. They said, like you guys, we got a show. Would you come on it? I went, yeah. And they went, oh, you'll come on it. I'm still waiting. They absolutely fell apart when I said I'd go on the show and discuss. And these big atheists.
Is that were we supposed to do? We were supposed to not invite her on the show. I always get it wrong.
Don't. I know she's actually going to come on and talk to us. That's terrifying. That's awful. It's just, they just fall apart. And I don't say that much. I just go, no, come up with something more interesting than you can't win the lottery. Come on, there must be something better. Go away and do some research. Ask me something a bit cleverer. But you ain't won the lot. You come back a week later.
The whole point, as you said, is that technically, and quantum physics says this, technically time is not fixed. We try to say that. So if you went and saw the lottery numbers and you've seen the lottery numbers and you bring back and you try to do those lottery numbers, you're changing something, the universe will change something.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this is my biggest thing with tarot, when I was doing tarot cards, because I studied tarot cards, is that tarot cards are guides. They're not set in stone, because as soon as you start you're told you're going to die on a Tuesday and you're going to be hit by a truck. So every Tuesday you're going to avoid trucks.
Yeah, you're not going to go out. Yeah.
You're changing the principles, the dynamic principles of the universe. So therefore the universe will go, okay, it's now going to be a Wednesday and it's going to be a banana. So
that's right.
Or maybe that's just my universe. But the whole point is the universe flows and it adapts. And I've always seen the tarot cards as guides, not set in stone. Not so and in actual fact, when you use, because the I Ching is not just like a tarot set, but when you use the I Ching, they say, or I was always taught, do not ask direct questions. Do not say a yes or no. That requires a yes or no answer. You ask questions like, what is the outcome of this? And it will give you a probability. It will give you, the likelihood is this. And one of the things I learned, with the strategy side, so Lao Tzu, or what the West normally say Lao Tzu's, which is the Tao Te Ching, and then you also got Sun Tzu or Sun Tzu's. He wrote the Art of War that became the Art of Strategy, and their whole philosophical point of view, it's not about winning or losing. It's about gaining the advantage, and there are lots of the Chinese style games. They don't have winners or losers. It's the optimum. It's probabilities. It's all about probability. And taking the resources from your opponent. So, we were talking about the whole fighting thing, and if somebody's all aggressive, and I just take the mickey out of myself and them, I'm dispersing their energy, and I'm winning the fight, or I'm dissolving the fight through humour. It's because they're expecting, and then there's martial moves that do the same thing. There's a thing called twist the waist, which is very beneficial. It's one of the Qigongs on my channel that I'll give away for free. It's a very beneficial exercise for IBS, arthritis, reducing headaches. Does lots of things on the medical side, but also on the martial side, when somebody hits you, most people, when somebody hits you, they tense and they brace up. And so when people hit, a lot of martial artists will be expecting you to brace up when you hit them. So they expect to hit a hard object. So what Twist the Waist teaches you it's the other name is Willow Tree Qigong. So you become like a willow tree. So
like when Bruce Lee said, didn't he? You bend like the willow. You just bend like the willow tree.
Which is bend like that. And it's a Daoist saying, you adapt and you turn. And so then when you hit that person, they're turning with the punch, and so the force dispenses. So the whole idea is you don't do what the opponent expects. You dissolve it, you turn with it, you go with the flow. So this whole thing, it's, if somebody's, when they attack you, they want you, they expect you to get offended. So the worst thing for them is you can do is turn around and either go, yeah, you're right, or take the mickey out of yourself, and hence why I said about the whole Steve Martin Roxanne, the movie. I'm the sort of person is that they say, oh, you don't see them because I've got earphones on, but oh, you've got big ears. Say, is that all you can come up with? Say, man, your ears are so big. You'd make Dumbo look like Tiny. I'll come up with.
But the more you do it, the more the other person's cringing, aren't they? They're absolutely cringing. The more you labour it and keep bringing up more and more examples, the more they're absolutely cringing.
Well, it's because it's the last thing that they expect you to do. Because ultimately they're running a program. This gets into consciousness programming. Ultimately, they're running a program. You're not doing your part of the script. Along with the movie that they're expecting.
Not playing the game. Not playing the game.
Yeah, they're not. You're not playing along with the game, so it completely ruins the game for other people when you don't go, oh yeah, I'm ugly or I'm stupid or I'm fat or whatever the insult is. Like, I've had people tell me you're no fun to pick on.
Yeah,
I'm glad.
Now I'm curious with you two. What is your aim? Where are you going with what you're doing? Now I'm just curious.
Boggie, you want to go first?
Right. Okay. So I mean, the point. Well, the aim of the show is to help promote others. Is to expect, because the Daoist viewpoint, or my viewpoint, is the more I help other people, eventually the more I help myself, because
absolutely, the more you give away, the more comes back. Totally. I totally believe that.
Cause and effect, everything is cause and effect. Energy goes back to energy. You give out energy, you'll receive more energy. So the more you give out, the more you get back. But I'm actually trained. Have you ever heard of the Barefoot Doctor, Stephen Russell?
Oh, I know him well. We had lunch a couple of years ago. I love him. I love Barefoot. He's an amazing guy. I know him well. We're good friends. He's amazing.
We're associates because I talked to him quite a bit.
Oh, you tell him you've interviewed me. He's adorable.
Oh, I will do. The metaphor, the name Barefoot Doctor is a name for an Eastern physician that uses all these different skills, and the whole point is that they adapt them to that person. So my eventual aim, my mission, is to do full-time healing coaching as a Barefoot Doctor, as a dragon dog shaman, and basically one of the things I want to do is get a truck and convert it into a moving quoon, which Ethan knows what that means, but basically a moving dojo. So think of a healing set and go from place to place. Wow. Now, because you're English, you heard of the Naked Chef? Remember the Naked Chef?
Yeah, that was I do remember the Naked Chef. Yeah,
Jamie Oliver. Now the whole point of his program was, the reason he was called the Naked Chef was that he went from place to place with his little camper van and went to different parts of England and eventually in Europe, cooking the local dishes. So he was naked in the essence of no frills, no fancy restaurants.
Straightforward. Just chuck a handful of that in, and absolutely.
Yeah. And the idea is similar to that, is to create a moving dojo, so set it up inside like a studio / temple, have it sprayed on the outside looking like a mountain and people doing Tai Chi, and then go from place to place.
That's amazing.
Doing the YouTube stuff and saying, a bit like he did in his episodes, saying, right, this week I'll be in Kent, or this week I'll be in Bournemouth.
I love that. It's like you get pop-up shops. This is pop-up dojo. I love it.
Yeah, and the idea, the idea will move from place to place, and so
love it.
That's my main aim.
So where are you based? Whereabouts are you?
I am Heathrow based.
Oh, up the road. You're only up the road from me then.
Yeah. Yeah, well, our connection is Janine Brockway. So I'm not far away at all. So that's what I'm building to. That's part of the YouTube and a thing called Patreon. It will slowly build up the money and build up. And then I've got people like Ethan and other friends who keep, like yourself, keep wanting me to go to go to the States, which I will do eventually. I will get, but for now, I want to be this traditional of China. This traditional
Ethan,
thing.
we're coming to stay.
Yeah,
You guys can both come stay with me. It'll be awesome. I'm a good cook. I will cook you all. I will cook you all healthy food because I can only eat healthy food. Otherwise, my intestines won't take it.
Right,
so
great.
Come stay with me. I'll cook for you. It'll be great.
We will do that. That'd be brilliant. So, Ethan, what's your aim? I'm just
okay. Well, that's a wormhole. So my aim. Okay. My ultimate big goal is. Okay. Let's see. Where do I start this? So as we've talked about, I make cloth weapons and stuff. So I have a lot of goals. The big one for these specifically is I'm going to start getting them mass produced. And then once they become successful enough and I have the funding, I will be going into getting them made with, it's called an accelerometer. So it can sense how fast they're going and how much force they hit things with, which will be built into an app that connects with your phone. So then you can go around and have battles with other people. And it'll actually keep track of like how much life you have. And the only ways to get more life or to get stronger or to do any of those things will be, if you want to get stronger, there'll be an exercise program. If you want to increase your energy, there'll be a Qigong program. There'll be a questionnaire that you take that will help determine. There's this really great healer in America named Paul Chek. He's a holistic healer. And he has a book called How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy. And it prescribes simple Qigongs and diets and all that sort of stuff. And in the beginning of the book, you take a quiz. And depending on what your overall score for the different areas that he asks about, because they're all questions about physical manifestations of energetic problems, he will prescribe, you have problems with your root chakra. So do this.
Wow, what's his name? I want to make a note.
Paul Chek. Paulchek. Amazing guy. Totally saved my life because
I will look at that. That sounds amazing.
Fantastic. He has a YouTube channel. He does a weekly like half hour to an hour video. Amazing man. So using that concept, building an app that will actually teach you the real things. Like, you know, everybody wants to be on a certain level, their personal hero, their hero's archetype. You can live their hero's journey. So say a bard. If you want to be a bard, you can learn the myths and legends of history and you take a test so you can actually become a bard and then you will be certified as a bard. Or you want to learn herb lore, have actual herb lore that you can study and learn to become a healer. So it's bringing life and video games together, basically. I don't play video games. I haven't played video games in years because I wasn't very good at them. But I realized that there's a massive epidemic between the perceived consciousness and the actual consciousness of the world, and they need to be melded together. So ultimately, that is a big part of the goal, is to build an app. So that way people won't be looking at their phones. They'll be worried about getting hit in the head by a cloth hammer. They'll be, you know what I mean? So it brings that amount of fantasy. It brings fantasy and reality together in an applicable form that is digestible for the masses. So that's kind of the base level of it. Along with that goes custom clothing for people. That includes, like for Boggie, I'm making 5-element hoodies based on the 5 elements of Chinese medicine. The meridians will be traced out in universe fabric. With pockets over the different chi points, and then he'll have different things that he can put in the pockets, like Tesla's work with copper coils and how energy gathers along copper coils. I actually made a third eye patch for this hat with copper coil in it, and it was gathering too much energy, so I was getting a headache from it. So I ended up not being able to leave it on there. So enlightenment and improvement through clothes and through gear. And then also going into, like, I make skateboards. I make a lot of stuff. I make skateboards, so steeds, you know, so you can get the steed that matches your hero's journey. And familiars, like, you know, Bunny Goyle is one of the familiars. And they're to help, and the familiars are to help guard your inner child against the world. So, and also there'll be a point too where I'll start putting crystals in things, like there'll be crystals inside the familiars to help change your vibration and stuff like that. And ultimately that will all lead to a world of side projects. Like there's something that as soon as I become successful enough with my Mythogear concept, something I really want to get started is I want to get started a group of international healing practitioners
All
I
right.
just I want this to exist. This is not something I personally want to make.
Yeah.
This is something I want to exist.
Just want it to happen. Yeah.
So have a group of international healers, but have it be a nonprofit organization so people like Boggie can come to the U.S. and heal in the U.S. and he'll have his way paid for by this nonprofit. Because I know people, there's someone in this area actually who will pay for you to, if you know the right people, will actually pay for you to go and see a therapist. There's a therapist I can go see who charges $125 an hour. But at this point in my life, I don't make very much money. So I can donate however much money I feel I can afford, but he's going to get the rest of his $125 an hour because it's going to come from this person.
Wow, that's
so
amazing.
Build that as a nonprofit charity so that way Boggie can come to the US and heal people for $5 a session, but he's still getting paid what he deserves. And that will be set up as a whole hierarchy of, there'll be a system. Because something else that really bothers me is there's not, in the spiritual community, is there's not a lot of checking for authenticity. Basically, you know, people will say, oh, I'm an energy worker and I'm a healer. So people go and see them, but are they really an energy worker? Are they?
Stuart Wilde said this. I'd love you to read some Stuart Wilde. I remember once I went to see him give a talk, and he said, "You go and see somebody, they're going to cleanse your aura. So they're waving their hands around. They might just be waving their hands around your head. You don't know they're cleansing."
Exactly. So ultimately, and I mean, the placebo effect does have its place, but ultimately, I want to see genuine authenticity be brought into all forms of life, and that's the whole thing with my gear. Is this hammer is applicable in every context. There is not a context where this hammer is inapplicable. You know, because you see so many people who are seeking empowerment through guns, through swords, because of the vibration that's been put on that by society. They pick it up and they become more powerful. But you know, you become a badass sword fighter. That's not applicable in the world today. You know, like, or you become a great marksman. 95% of the time, that's not applicable in the world. I can carry my hammers everywhere. I can hit almost anybody with my hammers. They will find it fun. It brings laughter and joy. I was helping a guy who was passing away of cancer. He was bedridden. Him and his wife got in a hammer fight and were laughing and having a good time. The applicability and the application I see lacking in so many things. I want it to be, everything needs to be real. Because there was a point where I was the fat, nerdy kid with a sword. When I was like in my maybe 14, 15 or so. And when I was about 19, I started exercising. I've just turned 30 not too long ago. I still exercise religiously. I still do Qigong because those are how you accrue power in this world, not in your mind. And that's the whole point of the Mythic Gear app, is that people will actually be accruing power instead of sitting behind their computer, making a character on an online video game that is this amazing character that has very little carryover to their everyday life.
That's exactly the point. That is the real point. Has little carryover.
So they will actually, their character will actually be getting stronger. They will actually be getting more experience points that will allow them to get access to greater wisdom and greater knowledge.
And if you want
to have more magic, you want to have more intelligence, there's going to be a book list. But it's going to be books like Nonviolent Communication. It's going to be books like, I don't know if you're familiar with Holographic Universe by Michael Talbot. Fantastic.
Oh, I love that. Oh my God, I love that. I love that.
Oh, it's an amazing book. I love that book too. So that will be required reading for this course. And then there will be, again, going to the authenticity, there will be a quiz that you have to take. You have to be able to answer general knowledge questions. And I want to change the testing system. It's not going to be like you have to get, you have to be able to get all of these questions right. It's going to be like applied knowledge, much more than member knowledge. But that's really what, to me, it's about, is making, everything needs to be authentic. It needs to be applicable. It's not authentic and applicable to play a video game or learn some obscure bit of knowledge that you're not going to apply in your life. So really trying to bring that all together in that synergy. So that's where that's basically.
Right. So I limit myself to 5 books a month because I just love buying books. I've got, my office is piled up with books. I've got so many. That's why I can just pick out the one you're talking about off my shelf because I've just bought so many. But the book I read that I'd like you to read, and it blew me away, it's called The One Thing.
One thing, okay.
And it brings it all back, because what happens is we go, I've got this idea, and this is what spiritual people do, because that's our energy. We have amazing ideas, we're creative, and this is one thing that's always helped me back and most spiritual people. So all of a sudden you come to this book called The One Thing, and it brings you back. What is the one thing you're meant to be working on right now? What is the most important out of all your projects? And it keeps bringing you back. When you read the book, your mind starts to go, okay, I've got to do that. Okay. It really sorts it all out. From all that stuff, it sorts it out. And then I found that once you got the next step's easy. We got the big picture, but how do we go from where we are to that big picture? How do we make all that happen? So once you know the next step, it starts to all open up.
Totally, I totally agree. I'm a big fan.
One thing is amazing. I think that book blew me away.
I'll write it down. Do you know the author's name?
I've got it over there. So hang on one second. I'll go and have a look.
Okay. Boggie, we can talk about stuff. What should we talk about? We can talk about life, the universe.
I'm going to put the microphone on first.
Running off. It's by Gary Keller. There it is. It's big, right? If you go onto Amazon, you'll find it. The one thing.
Cool.
That book really blew me away. It really formulated my thinking. It got me, instead of going, because I've always got the same as you. I've got all these things I want to do. Blah, blah, blah. It brings you back as you start making it happen.
Totally. It's all about figuring out one step and figuring out what the next step is.
Yeah.
I'm doing that with this whole Kickstarter thing and launching truth bombs. It's going to be truth bombs, and then I'm going to wait, and then I'm going to launch axes, and then I'm going to wait, and then I'm going to launch hammers.
Bring out one and let one. You've only got to fund one. And
totally.
The money will make the rest.
That's the plan.
The other thing I want you to do is when you say non-profit, I want you to have some of the profit. I think you've got to take some money for you.
Ultimately, Mythogear is all the money from Mythogear is going to me. So I'm gonna totally take. I'm really a big thing of this. I've always wanted to spread my light to the world and not have to worry about being financially compensated for it. So being horribly successfully rich is very high on my priority list.
Well, glad to hear it. That's the other thing very, very, very spiritual people do is go,
oh yeah, oh totally. No,
I don't want money. Yeah,
I want to be so stinking rich that I don't have to work, that I can sit around and take 2 months off work and not bat an eye about it. I'm very much I want to be able to, I want to do that so I can share because there's so many people out there that, like, who can't afford to have some custom piece of gear made for them to change their life.
You can't reach a lot of people. Money means that you can get your stuff out there and make a big difference. And that's the thing, Stuart Wilde. I'd love you to look at Stuart Wilde, because this is what he put over. He said, while you're sitting on top of the mountain, while you're in your cave doing all your spiritual stuff, you're not getting anything out there. It's just, it's like knowledge for its own sake. He said, you've got to get your stuff out there in the world. And he said, just get out there in the world and people will start showing up. And I love that.
Oh, it's so true.
Because that was a big thing in the whole Daoist. The Daoist point is, like, there were stories of people going up to the mountains to meditate. But one thing that in the Daoist, the Eastern Daoist stories that you don't get so much in the West, is they came back. They always came back, because there's no point. Yeah, you get one with the universe and you get downloaded all the information, you talk to God or whatever, but you come back and you spread it with society, because otherwise, what's the blooming point?
Absolutely. What is the point? If you don't get it out there in the world, what is the point? It's knowledge for its own sake, isn't it? Knowledge for its own sake.
Very much so.
Let's spread what we do.
And this whole thing about money as well is that, the Eastern point of view, barefoot, Stephen Russell would say, money is energy. That's why we call it currency. And it's one of the things in the Eastern point of view is that, and the Eastern point of view, the barefoot doctors and the dragon dog shaman were all about thriving. You don't surviving is easy. You learn techniques. Surviving is easy. Your aim is to thrive in life, not to survive. Is to thrive, and that's the point. Even for whether you're spiritual, whether you're whatever, especially spiritual people, we're like, oh no, I don't need money. I'm happy to eat this leaf.
Lentil curry. Yeah, I went to a spiritual retreat and they really did have lentil curry, like on the young ones, and it was just like,
even with the whole, do you want to be a vegan? That's fine, but it doesn't have to be one thing. You can boost it up. There was a big thing. like I've said this even before, in England, back in the 60s, though I was born in 1970, so I wasn't about, but I know that back in the 60s, when the whole hippie movement began, there was a big thing about vegetarianism. And then in the late 60s, going to the 70s, you had, in the medical profession, they had a whole string of people, vegetarians, having heart attacks. And the reason that this was happening, because a lot of them, one of the biggest things they were, instead of meat, they were eating lots of, like, say, nuts and cashew nuts. And one of the biggest thing I think it was Brazil's was the biggest thing they were in Brazil, almonds. And almonds contain high cholesterol. Wow. And they were eating nuts with high cholesterol and getting heart attacks. And they say, oh, hold up, I gave up meat, but so I wouldn't get heart attacks. Why? You know, he said, but you're eating something that contains high cholesterol. And then, you know, one of the other things is that certain people, some vegetarians, get immune deficiencies and very pale because there were certain minerals from meat they weren't getting. And so, well, this is why you should study food nutrition. You know, there are certain lentils, certain pulses that contain the iron that you need. So that's not a problem. You know, like this big thing, like in the Western about milk. Oh, you must drink milk for calcium. One of your best actual, one of the best things that will give calcium for the body that the body can absorb easily is actually molasses. Now, molasses in the West, in England, is not a great thing, but in America, molasses. I know certain parts. Molasses is a big thing in America. Is it known in where you are, Ethan?
I couldn't honestly tell you because it's really well known to me, but I grew up. I didn't grow up in America. I don't know exactly where I grew up. Like the rest of the world was America, but I was homeschooled and we volunteered at a co-op for like, by the time I was 10, I had been volunteering there for 5 years. I think I started there when I was about 5. So my perception of the rest of the world, most people in America know what molasses is. When I was a kid, it was either molasses or honey. There was no sugar in our house, like, ever. So, I mean, but that's another thing that people get into, touching on the whole vegetarian thing and the whole perception thing is like, people don't realize that, are you familiar with fulvic acid? Fulvic acid is the minerals from plants. So fulvic acid has iron in it. It's not iron from the ground. It's iron that a plant had microorganisms feed to it. Then it assimilated, metabolized it, and now has it in a completely different form. So your body will react to that iron in a completely different way.
Well, it's the same with calcium. They say the best way to get calcium is the same way cows get calcium. Eat green stuff.
Yeah, totally. Or you can get, but instead you take a supplement that's calcium that's ground up bone. That's like the usual calcium supplements. You can't absorb that.
No, you can't. That's exactly, you can't absorb it. Absolutely.
Yeah. Ultimately, it gets down to when ideals are more important than knowledge, you always run into a problem.
And you got to listen to your body. Watch what you eat. What effect does it have? I mean, it's like, I love pasta, but if I eat pasta, I just want to lay down and sleep afterwards. It's listening to your body. What is it doing to you? What is the effect on you? Your body soon tells you if you stop and focus and listen and see how your body's reacting.
Oh, absolutely. Your body knows a lot more than you do. That's the whole thing with muscle testing.
Yeah, I love muscle testing. It's genius stuff.
Genius. Oh yeah, totally. Like your body's way more on it than you are. At least my body's more on it than I am. I can do amazing things. I've had situations where I've almost gotten really, really hurt, and my body will do like a somersault or a cartwheel or something. Yeah. Things to save myself that I cannot access. Yeah. My conscious mind cannot do, but my body's great at.
Took over. Brilliant. That's superb.
Yeah, just like a great example is I fell off of a rope swing one time. I was on the side of a hill and I start rolling down this hill and my body decides to fold in half. So my torso stayed straight and my legs came up. So I was rolling and I stopped and because my legs hit and I'm staring at this old dead tree that would have, with a branch that was about this big, far away from my face, I would have been dead, hands down.
Wow.
There's no way. I would have kept going. My body decided to fold itself in half. it was totally its own decision. Or another time I went down a hill on a skateboard and I jumped off the skateboard because I was going to crash. And I took 3 steps. And in those 3 steps, I realized that my upper body was going faster than my lower body could possibly catch up with. And I tucked into a roll and rolled out of it. And I mean, I would have had to go to this. I would have lost all my teeth.
If fear had kicked in, you'd have gone rigid, you'd have got hurt.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But my body's got some great skills that I have no access to unless it's in dire straits. So your body, your body has far more understanding of this reality, I think, than our consciousness.
But we don't have time to stop and feel it and listen. Absolutely. We're so busy, rush around. If we take that moment just to stop and listen or allow our body to flow, then amazing things happen.
Oh, absolutely. I completely agree. And that's ultimately where the greatness of Qigong and other such practices come in, is being able to work on that relationship with your body. Because I know personally from my experience, I've been doing a form of Qigong consistently for it'll be like 2 years, December, I think, ish. And the ability to listen to my body and understand what it's trying to tell me has increased so much. I also don't drink coffee or eat sugar or drink alcohol I try not to do things to seriously activate my parasympathetic nervous system.
That's good.
Because that's really, well, being autistic, I spaz out about just about everything. So I guess that's
really good. I'm not so good at that. I have too many things that stimulate. I've just got that nature that goes towards things that are stimulating. Even if it's just drinking too much coffee, I just naturally steer toward that. And I've got to break that pattern. I've got to learn not to do it.
Well, don't worry, because the pain teacher will show up and teach you.
Oh, absolutely. Really yes. Do you know, you guys are so cool. I think this is the best interview I've ever had. You're so cool.
Thank you.
No, seriously, I've been interviewed all over the world. You are the most fun. You are just so super cool.
Oh, thank you.
I did say we were different, didn't I? I did warn you. We are different. We are known as the Chaos Brothers.
You guys should have a huge show, I tell you, because you are just such fun. I'm going to take my leave because it's late here and I've got to drive home. So I'm going to take my leave. But you guys have been such fun. I love this.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a blessing to get to know you. I was really excited to do the show, and I'm happy to say that my excitement has been equally matched by the experience.
I got a feeling we'll speak again. I'm sure we'll speak again.
I was going to say we'd love to do another show with you next year. Because there's a couple of guests we want to bring back, so I'll let you know. So we'll close up on the show. Do you want to stay about just for 30 seconds or so, just as we have to close? But so everybody else, that was the show. Hope you enjoyed it. I know we did. Take care. We have another show next week. Andre Sutherland is the guest. I remembered this week. So take care. Bye for now. Love, Chi and Shen, Sifu Boggie. Ethan.
Bye.